Right, let's start. How many people here have seen Knives Out? Okay, so just a handful. So for everybody else, can you explain pithily, pitch me Knives Out, okay?
All right, curtain goes up. Here's what you got, Mark. No, Knives Out is a kind of an old school Agatha Christie style whodunit, but it's a original story, it's original mystery, and it's set in modern day America. That's kind of the elevator pitch.
And what's at the very beginning we meet a group of people. What have they been united by?
So, in true whodunit fashion, it's a family of genuinely terrible people. The patriarch of this family, played by Christopher Plummer, is found. This is not a spoiler. This happens in the first 30 seconds of the movie. He's found murdered.
There's already a fan somewhere who's cross, you know.
I know. I apologize. Sorry.
When I was doing Last Jedi, I said, "Oh yeah, Luke." No, you can't say Luke. No, you can't.
Well, if you cross the line, I know that you're watching Breaking Bad and haven't gone to the final season yet. So I'll spoil Ozymandias for you if you go over. I got that hanging. The sword of Damocles is hanging over your head. Yeah.
I'm at the end of season 4.
So they're all his family. He is found dead under mysterious circumstances, and they're all kind of gathered to be questioned by the police and by a gentleman sleuth, Benoit Blanc, who's played by Daniel Craig.
There's obviously behind it the ghost of Agatha Christie. Why particularly that now?
Well, I've been an Agatha Christie fan since I was a kid. I've been reading her books all my life, and I'm a big fan of all whodunit movies, but particularly for me, the ones where Peter Ustinov played Poirot, which were in the kind of late 70s, early 80s. The sweet spot was Death on the Nile and Evil Under the Sun. Yeah. And that kind of all-star cast, and not a comedy, not a parody, like a straightforward mystery, but with a sense of slightly cheeky, self-aware fun. And then, the notion of really genuinely taking a whodunit and trying to plug it into 2019, not just by giving it kind of a modern skin and putting cell phones in it, but trying to do what Agatha Christie did with her characters, which were they seem like kind of dusty old tropes today. All of her character types, like the gruff old colonel and the butler, but when she was writing, she was drawing kind of elevated kind of caricature-like versions of types who were very present in her contemporary society. And the idea of doing that today, doing a whodunit where we do the same thing and kind of draw these big, larger-than-life characters, but from maybe some people that we'd recognize a little more in 2019, for better and for worse.
Shall we see a clip? This is from fairly early on, in which we see the character, the Daniel Craig character you talked about. We also see some of the rest of the family that you've described. Because I think this is the best way of describing the tone, is to actually watch a bit of it.
All right, cool. Yeah.
As we were watching that, because I looked across at you, you had a smile on your face. So it looks like it was a joy to make.
Yeah, it was so much fun to make. And I think, for me, this is just, I don't want to seem like an asshole smiling at my own movie, but what I'm still enjoying watching is just the actors. And I could watch, like Toni Collette, I could just watch her all day long. She's incredible. And that was, for me, so much fun, just getting this group of amazing actors together, giving them kind of these very big characters to play and just letting them go to town. And all of them snapped into it, and they all had a lot of fun. Like I hope you can kind of tell watching that how much fun everyone's having. And Daniel, if you haven't seen the movie yet, he goes for it. He has a lot of fun in this movie. That's just a little precursor. Yeah.
I think it's definitely a film that deserves to be seen on the big screen with an audience, because as you heard just then, people respond very well to. Screening I was in, there was more laughter in it than many of the alleged comedies that I've seen this year. But the reason that it works is it's the spice, it's the bitterness, and I think in that particular scene, it's that push in to Jamie Lee Curtis, reminding you that we're just about to bury a father who committed suicide. What are you doing here? Yeah. And that balancing act is, I think, must be the most difficult thing.
Yeah, and that was very crucial when I was sending the script around even to the actors and showing it to people and trying to get the movie going. Because I think a big reference, the biggest recent reference a lot of people go to is the movie Cluedo, which is I love. It's great, but it is a comedy and it's kind of a straight up parody, and I wanted to be really clear to everybody that this was going to be really fun. This was going to have comedy in it, but this is not a it's not a send-up of murder mysteries. We're doing a real murder mystery here, and you're going to hopefully get all the pleasures you get from a real murder mystery, and hopefully, laugh quite a bit as well.
And is that crucially to do with casting it right? Because it's a terrific cast, and I know that for you, you said most of the battle is in getting the right cast and then letting them do what they do.
Yeah. I mean, well, you can see from there. It's these characters are on the edge of caricature. They are, it goes back to what I love about Agatha Christie. She was drawing these kind of larger than life types, but I also kind of made this thing hoping that it would work as a movie, again, not just about murder mysteries, but a genuine one, and also as a movie that has an emotional core to it and that is satisfying when you get to the end on a couple levels beyond just the puzzle box, having figured out the trick type level. So that meant that the characters needed at least 1 foot on the ground, and casting-wise, I think, my favorite type of performance is the type that's huge but grounded. And it takes a really good actor to be able to go as big as some of the actors go in this movie and still have them feel like they're tethered to the planet Earth and still have you believe that at the end of the day, at the end of the movie, that they're people. It's really fun to watch these guys kind of ride that line throughout the movie.
Toni Collette reminded me, I only just noticed this watching it now because I've seen the film a couple of times, but just watching that clip, Toni Collette's performance reminded me slightly of the version of Angie Bowie that she did in Velvet Goldmine.
Oh, wow.
There's a similar sort of sense of, arch, serious, but also that kind of weird new agey stuff going on in the background. Yeah. And as far as Daniel Craig is concerned, because even from that very small clip you can see, how did you talk to him about that role, Benoit Blanc?
We talked a bit about the accent.
Did you do it? Did you go, I want it to be like this?
He's doing an accent in this movie. I had written that character with an American Southern accent for a couple of reasons. I feel like, and this goes back to why Ustinov's Poirot is my favorite Poirot, because I think he got the essential clownishness of the character.
Kenneth Branagh says hi, incidentally. Just
please tell him a little right back. I loved his Poirot as well.
No, I know.
Yeah, Sir Branagh, I apologize. But I loved his as well. But Ustinov, I think, but Branagh got this too, with the outrageous mustache and the slight self-important kind of self-inflation. And I think that's not just fun. That's a really important aspect of a good whodunit detective, and it's something that Columbo, I don't know if it's very popular out here, but Columbo in the States very much has, and Miss Marple in a different type of way. She's not a buffoon, but has that kind of like kindly old spinster who's just serving you tea and asking questions, and you don't really take her seriously until you're being led off to the paddy wagon. And the best of these types of detectives, I think, have that element. And so the accent was a way of kind of working part of that into it. And I just knew I wanted it to be pleasing as opposed to annoying to listen to. And so
it's also an element of performance, because everything about even the way he's sitting, that kind of theatrically sitting back, like you kind of have the impression that he spent 10 minutes figuring out how to look, like that. I love that idea that, like the Poirot thing, it's a performance. He's putting on a show.
Absolutely, and he refers to himself in the third person a little too easily. Yeah, he's that type of guy. Yeah.
As far as the plot's concerned, one of the things I love, and this isn't a plot spoiler, when you get to the end, you don't do the thing about producing somebody that was in the first reel that everyone forgot about and go, aha, Did you reverse engine? Did you work backwards? Did you start with knowing what the conclusion was and then work it backwards?
Well, I mean, I kind of started like even more zoomed back than that. This might be very boring. If it is, I apologize. Someone go like this if this starts getting boring, and I'll switch topics. But it's I started thinking very broadly just about the genre itself, and you know, I love whodunits, like I said before, and I also, though, kind of fundamentally agree with Hitchcock, who was not a fan of the whodunit, and his problem with it was that it's one big build-up to one big surprise, and that's anathema to Hitchcock's method of entertainment. That's why in Vertigo he tips the whodunit very early and makes it about suspense. And I feel like the best whodunits and the best of Christie's books find a way to put another engine in the car, basically. Like, and then there were None, which I think is probably her best book, has the engine of a horror movie in it. It's these people getting killed off one by one and this sense of growing dread. And so basically I was thinking, okay, I still want all the pleasures of a whodunit. I want the questioning. I want that denouement at the end where the detective like kind of lays the whole thing out in the library with all the flashbacks. I wanted that. But I tried to figure out, okay, how do I get kind of the mechanics of a more Hitchcock-style thriller into the middle of it and still have all the stuff I love about a whodunit? And so that was kind of just the big picture kind of math that I started out doing. And then you kind of figure out, okay, what if it had this shape? And then you start backing actual plot elements into it. And then you get deeper and deeper into details and start losing your mind.
One of the things I love about the film, and I think it's great, one of the things I love about it is that you're a genre fan. You're an unabashed genre fan, and you've worked in science fiction and in this. You've never had any problem with genre, have you? It's something that you're completely
have nothing but problems, which and movies are just problems, yeah. But yeah, I love it. And it's I don't know. I mean, besides just a lot of my favorite stuff growing up being genre movies, I feel like it gives you a shared vocabulary with the audience. It gives you a chessboard to play with. When you sit down, it gives you a shared sense of rules and automatically opens up this kind of meta conversation between you and the audience, because for something like a whodunit, which has very set rules, you have an expectation when you sit down to watch a whodunit. And so when you're watching one that's made today, you know when the author is following those rules, you know when the author is breaking those rules, and that becomes a very fun give and take, hopefully towards the ultimate end of giving you kind of the pleasure you expect from the genre.
In terms of that expectation, what the audience expects, what the audience wants, you came to this having done Star Wars, and that's that's the greatest behemoth of audience expectation. Are there any similarities between making Star Wars Last Jedi and making this is a series of people in a house fundamentally, you almost chamber piece kind of setting, Star Wars, the whole of the universe, and yet is it fundamentally the same process?
It absolutely is. Yeah, in that both in terms of the notion of the role that audience expectation plays in it, which is it's something where you're. No, it's strikingly similar. It's something that you deeply love, and you're trying to kind of do in a way that's going to essentially honor and fulfill what you deeply love about it. And within that context, you're trying to tell a story that examines it in different ways and approaches it in different ways, but you're ultimately trying to get at what for you is the heart of the thing. And that's is similar to whether I was doing it with Star Wars or with the time travel stuff with Looper, or with noir with Brick, or with whodunits with this. That's always kind of the heart of the approach to any genre, I think, is trying to kind of get to the heart of it. And also then process-wise, it's weird, frankly, how working on a Star Wars movie is not very different from working on something with people in rooms talking. It's true, because I know because the truth is the stuff that's actually different. I mean, there are things that are different, like the effects-based sequences. That's a kind of a different process. Yeah. But when you're just shooting scenes, yeah, there might be, you might be, instead of being in a room the size of this, you're in a room the size of that, and there's a green screen at that end of it, and there's 40 more trucks parked outside, and there's nicer catering. But the caterers were very good on Knives Out. I don't want this, the caterers. But they brought donuts every Friday. But the truth is, the actual work is the same no matter what the scale of the movie is. It's a camera and a couple of actors, and you're trying to make a scene that feels like it's engaging and feels like the gears click together with it. And that everything else kind of goes away when you're in the middle of the real work that really matters. And that's what makes the movie tick or not tick. All the other stuff is just window dressing. The movie lives or dies by whether or not the scenes work with the actors.
How did it emotionally feel doing a Star Wars film? Because I know that you've said that you were very invested in the franchise, in the stories. How did it feel? Did it feel like somebody was giving you something and saying, "Don't break it" or "Take care of it"? Or
no, it felt like, it was the happiest experience of my life, And I think when I'm on my deathbed, it probably still will be one of the happiest experiences of my life. It was top to bottom, just an absolutely incredible experience. The people I got to work with, the heroes I got to meet, the stuff that was fun about it, the stuff that was hard about, everything, the release of it, the interactions with all the fans, all of it has just been an incredible, wonderful kind of growth machine, I guess. It's been just, I don't know.
Because you experienced the full eye of the storm with the Star Wars audience, some massively in favour, some a bit more on the nerdy side. And due to the miracle of Twitter now, you can hear the whole audience talking all the time. And I thought you conducted yourself through that.
I know.
Incidentally, for the record, I was on the "it's good" side. I was,
I know I'm going to get yelled at for your phrasing of those two sides. Somehow.
It's okay. They're yelling at me already. It's fine.
It's all right. Yeah. Well, yeah, but I don't know. Again, as someone who's grown up as a Star Wars fan, I was in my 20s when the prequels came out. This notion that it was all, that no one was fighting about Star Wars until recently is totally absurd. It was, and when people cared this deeply about something, that's what happens, is people care that deeply about it, and that's what makes it wonderful. And that's the two sides of it are two sides of the exact same coin.
But that's what I thought was remarkable about your response, was there was nothing defensive about it. What you did was you engaged with the engagement. And I have heard more people have more heated discussions about that film than any science fiction film I can remember in the last 5 or 10 years. I mean, people who will sit down and argue for an hour about it, and that surely is the ace card of the film, isn't it?
Well, that's not like the intent when you sit down to make it. It's not like let's get people arguing. No, but I think that's something that first of all, that's something that, like I said, is in the bones of Star Wars fandom, and it has always been. Honestly, and then there's an element of it that has nothing to do with Star Wars, and is just where the popular discourse is right now in terms of everything in the world. And you have to take that into account also. And so, yeah, that's an element of it too. But I'm coming from and I'm still in the place of just completely loving this and loving, I don't know, I genuinely, the notion of making something that people engage with on this level is extraordinary, and I feel very incredibly privileged to have just been a part of it.
I want to show a clip from Last Jedi, because one of the things I'm very interested in about your films is the use of sound. In Knives Out, there is this symphony of voices, and you hear voices in rooms which sound differently wherever you are environmentally. There is probably the most jaw-dropping sequence in Last Jedi. Instantly, this may be a plot spoiler. If you haven't seen it yet, sorry. But it's a moment in the film in which you take sound out. It's a moment of silence, which in any other sort of register would be the loudest moment in the film. And it was, I think, the best use of silence I've seen in a film in a really long time. Okay, so let's just have a look at this. I think that's one of the best moments in the whole Star Wars series. That you are very careful about the way your films sound, aren't you? I know you have a musical bent and you've worked time and again with the same composer, but sound is very important to you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's, I mean, two of my favorite filmmakers are the Coen brothers, and I was obsessed with their films in film school. I still think they're two of the best filmmakers working today, and that's watching their movies and tuning into how the sound was used as a fundamental storytelling device and not just as a last layer that you put on that is ornamental. That I got quite a bit of from just loving how the Coen brothers use sound in their movies.
So when you're mixing a film afterwards, you sit there with the sound designers. I mean, I get the same sense that you do what David Lynch did, which was sit there and, anguish about the sound for as long as you would anguish about the picture.
Oh yeah, and Ren Kleiss, who was our sound designer on The Last Jedi, who he's done amazing work with Spike Jonze and David Fincher. He's a really talented guy. And I remember when we were mixing this, it was funny watching it, remembering the anguishing over the shape of exactly what we took out when and how silent we went for it. And you can it's funny, it doesn't go completely silent.
There is a rumble, isn't there?
Is a very low rumble that then goes away, and so there's still another layer to peel away and leave a vacuum right before that final beautiful sound Ren designed for when we go to the big wide shot and we finally do get the blast. So I mean, yeah, dialing those things in, I think we probably spent as much time just on that one sequence of shots as I've spent on entire reels of previous movies, mixing wise. Yeah.
And does it give you do you get a sense of thrill when you get it right? Because when, as you say, I mean, I was just noticing that you're right, that that rumble is there. I thought it was silent, and then it drops down. When you watch that, is it like it's a magic trick that works?
A bit, yeah. I mean, when you're actually watching it on the day, you inevitably, you've watched it so many times that you lose perspective, and you're like, well, okay, let's leave it there. And I guess that works. But yeah.
Let's go back from that right back to Brick. I want to show the opening of Brick because I know a number of people felt this. When Brick was first, was it commissioned? Was it originally going to be a DVD release, or was it always going to be a theatrical release?
Well, no, it was. We made it totally independently and took it to Sundance, and Focus Features picked it up, and theatrical, yeah, it was always.
So I remember seeing it in a preview screening, and literally the first 3 minutes of that film, I remember watching the audience do this, going, right. They literally sat up because everything that it was kind of like, okay, it was announcing somebody who knew what they were doing, knew how filmmaking was working, and it was thrilling, and it was intriguing and strange and mysterious. And there's two things about it. One of them is, and I'll show the sequence now, one of them is that the shots are weirdly kind of misaligned in terms of perspective, so you think you're looking at something from a character perspective, but that you're not. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is the soundtrack. Tell us before we play it, what are we hearing on the soundtrack at the beginning of Brick?
So this is, I mean, it's largely score. It's Nathan Johnson, who is my cousin, who we've been making movies together since we were 10 years old, and he's done all of my movies with the exception of Last Jedi. He did Knives Out, and the sound that you hear, it's a xylophone, but he took the mallets and stuck the rods inside the xylophone tubes and jangled them, and it created this kind of ghostly sound, and yeah, it's Nathan's work.
Okay, let's see the clip, because I think this is such a great opening. Okay, so honestly, I could talk to you for an hour about that opening 2 minutes, but so much fun. Firstly, you get the sense from the angles not matching up that it's a traumatic memory, because the angle from which you're looking at her isn't the angle from which he would be seeing her.
Yeah, it's fragments. It's tiny little memory fragments, and it immediately draws you into his head. That was kind of the idea of it. And in kind of like a dream, to start it off kind of in a dreamlike space.
And then the cut from the bangles in the thing to the bangles live, so you know that you've jumped back. So you don't really need the 2 days previous.
I know. I felt like the 2 days previous is we've gone back and forth with this a bit. And I have another friend who feels very strongly about this too. That because when we screened it at Sundance, it did not have that title.
That's what I heard.
Previous, yeah. I added it because I felt like the movie is so weird that any helping hand we can give the audience in terms of orienting. And I didn't mind. I liked it. It wasn't like somebody like forced me to put it in. I was like, oh, what if we put this in just to give kind of like a very clean, okay, now we're hopping back this amount of time and start the clock ticking to get back to that moment.
It also gives it a sense of urgency, because otherwise you wouldn't know.
That was a big part of it. That was a big part of it, knowing that the first act is largely Brendan gathering clues, and to give at least one signpost at the beginning that, okay, 2 days from now, this girl is going to end up dead, and we're going to have to figure out why. That seemed worth it to me.
And people forget that Dashiell Hammett, who was kind of the guiding light behind this, wasn't beyond being very, very telling audiences clear things when they needed to know them.
Oh yeah, I mean, Hammett's whole style is not, I think, Chandler is maybe what most people think of when they think of the prose of detective fiction that noir comes from. Chandler's much more, he's an absolutely brilliant writer, but he's exactly the opposite of Hammett. Chandler is, long monologue descriptions of the fog in the city. Hammett is much more like, he's much more Hemingway-like in his style. He has no fat at all and just nothing but pure information, sentence by sentence. Very, very clear. And it was Hammett that Brick came from,
Is the spelling mistake deliberate?
Which one?
It says
I guess
Rosat
not.
and Rosat. It's what the
Yeah.
It's an A and an O on a thing.
You can tell from me asking which one that it was not. It makes sense with her. She's on drugs.
I just always worried whether that was a clue that I had, because what the film.
Yes, it was a clue. I'm glad you caught that. Took you long enough, but better late than never. Yeah.
But that's what I mean about the atmosphere of it. It makes you sit up and go, okay, what's important? What do I need to know? Because I kind of have the sense that everything is here in this opening sequence.
Well, that's also part of the genre contract. It's also part of like the audience realizing, oh, this is a mystery. We're going to have to figure out what happened to this girl, and so you automatically start leaning forward. It's like, similar with a whodunit. We were talking earlier today about red herrings and whether it's fun to plant a bunch of red herrings into a whodunit. And the answer is you kind of don't need to, because the audience knows that that this is the type of movie they're watching. They'll read into everything, and they'll read more interesting red herrings into stuff than you could ever hope to plant.
Were you surprised by how successful Brick was? Because it was a kind of career-making step, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it did much better here than it did in the States.
We're a lot smarter.
It's true. It's true. I wasn't going to say that. Yeah, but it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't like a huge, like Reservoir Dogs type smash or something. But I was blown away that we even got a release, and that we made it with family money with $200,000, and we took it to Sundance, which right there, that's like just getting into Sundance feels like winning the lottery, and then Focus picked it up. My head was spinning. So at the time, it didn't feel like a big like breakout hit at all. I don't think it really was. But for me, just getting my foot in the door felt really like something.
Have you watched it again recently?
Yeah. We've just done a new Blu-ray transfer. There's been one out here that's quite good, but there's never been a Blu-ray release in the States. So my cinematographer Steve Yedlin just supervised a new transfer of it, and we watched through it.
And how did it feel revisiting it after all this time?
I like it. It's good. It's weird watching something. It's nice because I have enough distance from it to where my memories of the day-to-day of making it have faded enough that I am watching it a little bit more as a movie. But it's still tough because it's also because these are all still, like, I'm still good friends with Joe, and Noah Segan is still one of my best friends, and so Nora I'm still close with. And so in a way, it's also a bit like flipping back through your high school yearbook. It's like, oh my God, they were babies. It's odd, yeah.
Do you have equally good memories about Looper?
Yeah. Looper, because Brick had... The Brick, we got kind of like, the reception was very, very warm, and then I made a movie called The Brothers Bloom, which was a very personal movie for me and an amazing experience making it. and then it didn't do much when it was released, and it was
got very good notices, got good reviews.
It got okay. It's not how it felt at the time. At the time, the thing is, people who loved it really connected, which it was really nice. But it was, it definitely to me felt like, oh God, I need to put my nose to the grindstone, or I'll, it felt like, oh no, they're on to me, and if I want to keep doing this, I better get the next one really good. And so Looper was a very intense working experience, and buckling down with Joe. I've worked harder on the writing than I had ever done, and I just buckling down with Joe and really trying to get every element of it right. It was a really good experience, a really intense one. Yeah.
And that's that has the time traveling thing, which on the outside it looks like a genre picture, but I had forgotten how dark it was. It's a really, really dark, not cynical but dark movie.
Yeah. I mean, it was the whole thing was kind of about it was about kind of like using violence as a problem-solving tool in the places that leads. And the whole intent of it was with Bruce Willis's character to push his actions beyond the point where an audience would stick with him. And what we learned is that it's really hard to make an audience not stick with Bruce Willis. The audience is really, even if you have him shoot a child in the face, the audiences will still give Bruce Willis the benefit of the doubt. This is very, very interesting. But yeah, it intentionally goes. I mean, I hope it comes out the other side in a hopeful place. But we go to some dark places in there in the way. Yeah.
That idea of working with a star persona, because star personas are such a strange kind of nuclear thing. They're not entirely understandable, and people who have it in a way which is kind of intangible. And there is, as you say, that the Bruce Willis presence in that movie is. It's almost like a special effect that it's Bruce Willis.
Yeah, and you have to. I mean, that was a big lesson in making Looper. Is that, obviously you want to cast just for the best actor for the part, but especially when you're dealing with somebody who has the amount of, it's not just because star power. I think about like charisma on the screen, which is a whole different thing. That is a thing that some people just have, which is crazy. But I mean, in terms of an audience's perception of somebody, of having seen them in types of roles over the years, you have to take that into account. You have to factor that in the way that is a very powerful effect on audiences, in a way that you would be a fool not to work that into the math of how you cast something and how you stage stuff. It's quite interesting.
And are the lessons that you've learned during making all those? Are they brought into play in Knives Out, in which you have a number of terrific actors, but some of whom the fact is Daniel Craig brings a certain baggage with him, and Toni Collette brings not baggage but heritage with them. You do feel like you understand how to not get trapped in that.
Well, I think it's, again, it comes back to them all being terrific actors with great range who I know can, but there's nothing I love more than getting an actor who I'm a huge fan of and giving them something to do that I haven't quite seen them do before.
How was Michael Shannon?
He was amazing, man. He's so cool. He's very...
Scary?
No, he's not scary. He's intense. Really? He's intense, but he's looks intense.
Scary to me.
No. He's a sweet dude. He's a sweet dude. But I wouldn't want to get on his bad side, but he's a sweet dude. And he was funny. Like there's not a lot of improv in Knives Out, but there's some just like when they were in the fighting scenes with each other, I would let them just throw out zingers. And Michael Shannon always had the funniest shit that he ended up saying. And I think it was funnier because you wouldn't expect it. It's like when the stern Sunday school teacher comes out with a fart joke. It's extra funny because what just happened.
While we're on the subject of comedy, I want to show one more clip, which is a clip from, and you alluded to this at the beginning, it's a clip from Breaking Bad, and I'm nearly at the end of series 4. I haven't seen series 5, so you cannot say anything about Ozymandias, and you haven't seen the movie.
I haven't seen the new one. Yeah, not yet.
So I want to show a clip from Fly, because it's a very particular episode in which they're basically stuck in the lab, and the setup is that there is a fly in the lab, and Walter is obsessed with the idea of the fly contaminating the environment, and Jesse isn't having any of it. But it goes from being this kind of almost Beckett-like Kafkaesque absurd into something which slips over into slapstick comedy. So I'll show the clip and then we'll talk about it. Okay. Here we go.
Moira, Wally Beckett, and Sam Catlin were the writers of that episode, and that's they're absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
So I know it's the thing about enjoying your own work, but you were laughing all the way through that. It's brilliantly funny.
Again, that's Moira and Sam, yeah, and those two guys. I mean, I got to sit back and watch it on TV. It was great. But yeah, those guys, those two, and they getting to work with Aaron and Brian. I felt just really lucky I got that episode specifically, just getting that concentrated amount of time with those two actors and getting to see them play that range that you talked about, from being very, very funny in the scene to the heavier stuff that starts happening later on in the episode. For me, I feel like I learned so much from getting to work with these two, on this. And yeah, it's funny, man. The thing is, you have to, I don't know, yeah, it's kind of like your main job when you're directing to be the audience. You can't, it's not your job to sit there and be analytical and to dissect the performance and try. It's very much your job to have just a reaction, to watch it and laugh at it or not, and then figure out if you didn't laugh, why you didn't laugh. I guess that comes after. But.
So is that what happens on set? So you'll sit and you'll watch a take. It's the subtlety. It's the thing when Jesse, and this when he goes, I'll make it count. Presumably by take 5 or 6 of that line, is it still fun? I mean, how do you know that's
it is. And I'm constantly trying to not ruin takes by laughing. Yeah, and it's sometimes inappropriately so. But I think that's, again, that's like you have to, that's taking joy in it and enjoying what you're seeing on the screen. I don't know how you could make movies if you didn't. And like I said, that's 90% of your job on set is to be the audience for the actors, and that means being analytical and making it work. That also just means enjoying what they're doing. That means if what they're doing is funny shit, then you're like biting your fist trying not to laugh at it on set. That itself is incredibly valuable.
And I think looking at that, you're a fan of Keaton, you must be a fan of silent comedy, you must be somebody who finds that stuff entertaining. I'm right in that, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Who doesn't? Yeah. And have you seen, they do a lot of amazing screenings here, but anytime you get a chance to see, a Harold Lloyd or a Buster Keaton, obviously, any of the great old slapstick comedies with a modern audience, it's extraordinary because they play like gangbusters. It's amazing, the roaring laughter that you'll see if you see one of those films with a great audience. It hasn't aged a day. Yeah.
Before we go to the audience questions, which we'll do in just a couple of minutes, of all the stuff we've talked about, and bearing in mind that obviously probably the thing that you're most proud of is the thing that you just did, what's the thing that you have the best memories of your career so far? What's the thing that you're fondest of? And it's going to be Brothers Bloom, isn't it?
Well, Brothers Bloom was really, so I was, just kind of like broke throughout most of my 20s trying to get brick made. I didn't travel much. I kind of wrote Brothers Bloom and wrote all these exotic locales in it to have a big experience, sort of. It's kind of cheeky to say, but and also, there was a lot more to it than that, but that was a really amazing kind of first-time experience for a lot of stuff. But I've had every movie is a different kind of like I said, growth machine. I don't know how else to put it. Every movie is its own thing. And I like I said, man, I feel very lucky to have done any of them at all. And
are you still attached to the Star Wars world? Are you still are there more Star Wars projects to come from you?
Yeah, so Lucasfilm right now is figuring out, what's going to happen when, and I'm still talking to them. But I'm also, I have kind of a few things in the back of my head of my own weird things that I want to do also, and not sure what's going to happen quite next, but yeah.
Are you superstitious about talking about anything that hasn't happened?
Oh, always. It's not even superstitious. You just learn from experience. Don't say it out loud.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah, absolutely. The one thing, you have to kind of just, that's why you have to just kind of, let the river carry you downstream and kind of take what comes. It was something that was slightly new to me with this movie. I mean, I'd mostly written scenes. I'd rarely written scenes that were or movies that were ensembles in the sense that this is. And the answer is, to some extent, it self-regulates, because when they all show up, they all kind of, give you, they all, that's the cliche, they all got along and were lovely, but they did all get along and were lovely. But also, they all kind of know what they're signing up for. And once they're on set, because everybody is kind of playing their role and everyone's doing their thing in it, there's this really nice positive gravity that happens where you would have to be a real asshole to be the asshole, basically. And so everybody kind of clicks into what they're doing, is very gracious with everybody else, which was wonderful. And then directing-wise, it is a matter of making sure that everybody gets the attention that they need. And it's the same thing with any film, but a little more so with ensembles, I think, where you are very much in the role of figuring out what each individual person needs, and then figuring out how you can best give it to them. Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking last night. I was getting drunk with Nathan, my composer, and we were talking about musicals and how much fun it would be to do a musical. That'd be really fun, right? Drunk musical. Yeah, and it's not. I mean, I think it would probably be the cart pulling the horse a bit, to make like a list of genres and figure out, let's do this and this and that. You kind of go where, and there's also always like I don't know. Just for me personally, there are kind of two ingredients before I can start writing anything. There is kind of like usually the genre element of it, but then that can't start going just on its own. It needs something that is that I actually care about at the moment, or I'm thinking about, or I'm thinking about in myself, or am angry about, or something. And it's when the gears of the genre and the thing that actually matters click together, and not just like, okay, let's stick this genre over this thing, but when they actually work together and complement themselves, and one can't run without the other. That combination is sort of what actually gets the engine running for me. So yeah, that answers it. The language, I mean, it very much was drawn from Dashiell Hammett. I mean, all the Brick came from me seeing Miller's Crossing and then reading an interview with the Coen brothers where they said how Dashiell Hammett was their inspiration. I read Hammett for the first time and felt like I had been punched in the stomach. It just had such a direct lightning bolt impact on me. And Brick just completely came from me wanting to kind of sort of push. I love film noir, but sort of push aside the conventions of film noir and get to my experience reading those books, which was a very immediate one. And so a lot of the language is just totally swiped from Hammett in terms of the style. But then I also mixed in. I'm from Southern California, and I mixed in some beach slang. I took slang from Steely Dan songs. I just kind of made up some words. I just kind of, the idea was to inform the audience right off the bat that they were in a different time and place. They were in a different reality. That this wasn't, this was an elevated world that they were in. And language seemed like a good way of doing that. And then the actors, the answer is we rehearsed, and we rehearsed a lot. We had months and months where they would just come over to my apartment. I would make them lunch, and we would just run the lines. And contrary to, it was weird because it was very contrary to a lot of more modern acting techniques. What we found is naturalism did not work at all for the language in the movie, and we had to just drill the lines. We just had to say the words over and over and over and over again until the weirdness of the words was no longer a barrier. And it's almost like a pianist learning a piece. You have to get the muscle memory of your fingers, and then once you have that, you can put the emotion into the actual performance. And so that's how we ended up working with the actors. Well, I mean, first of all, I think Martin Scorsese can like and not like whatever the fuck he wants. And I think he's earned that. So, and I think, I always want to hear what Scorsese has to say about movies and hear his perspective on it, So, I don't know. I think that, and I think, I mean, the sort of, I'm on Twitter too much. I'm on Twitter. Anyone who's on Twitter is on Twitter too much, probably. I'm on Twitter too much. And I will say, I mean, I think that I love film Twitter. I'm very entertained by it. And I think there is also a pattern of outrage that is very much just a pattern. And it's just a kind of a slightly commodified, slightly gamified pattern that happens of taking a fragment of an interview, putting the most, the craziest part of it in a headline and getting everybody to tweet, fuck you back and forth about it. And the thing is that can be entertaining. It also starts to get boring after a while, I think. So, But look, I like I said, I think anyone, and Scorsese in particular, can think whatever they like about the movies, and that's I as someone who loves small stuff, I also love big stuff. I love franchise stuff too. I think it's but yeah, I don't know if that answers it.
And my tuppence worth, they are movies.
Well, I mean, Shane would probably bury his head in his hands hearing you say he was because he was kind of a consultant, but I don't want to blame Shane for what I'm sure are a lot of the timeline fuck-ups in Looper, because Shane made what's probably the closest we'll ever get to an accurate time travel movie with Primer, which is a fantastic film if anyone hasn't seen it. Yeah. But my approach to it with Looper was very much kind of and this is generally my feeling about time travel in movies. I think that it is much it's not a science element, it's a fantasy element. You have to treat it the same way that you treat spells in a Harry Potter movie, which is it has to have an internal logic that works for the movie, and there has to be built into the narrative of the movie something that gives you fences and bumpers so that you kind of keep your vision on the part that works. And it has to make narrative sense, I guess, is the main thing. And so that's kind of in The Diner where Bruce Willis says we're not going to talk about time travel. That was kind of an open sort of acknowledgement of, okay, here's what matters about this. And that, given that context, you try and do the work, you try and make it right, you try and figure out, okay, in that context, this does make sense for this, and this is the logic of it. But containing it to that as opposed to trying to actually project it as something that could actually happen and that you could actually track the... yeah, I could keep talking about this. I won't. But and then in terms of whodunits, it's in that way it's different from the whodunit, because in a whodunit everything does actually have to track, and in a whodunit you need to be able to diagram it out, and it all needs to make sense. And the few places it doesn't are in my mind, actual flaws. I'm sure a few places exist in Knives Out, but you try and actually get everything to line up with a whodunit, I think. Yeah, I mean, there are no happy coincidences. You kind of have to make decisions, and but at the same time, it's not something where it's like eating your oatmeal. It's not something where you think, boy, I should do this, and so you sit down and do it. To me, it's genuinely exciting right now that you can put people at the forefront of films who have traditionally not been there. And I think just storytelling-wise, it makes for more interesting stories to have perspectives that we haven't been watching for the past 80 years of cinema over and over. And that to me, I don't know, I guess this is part of the idea of representation, but that to me, just even storytelling-wise, is genuinely exciting. Process on Last Jedi was reading JJ's script, having long conversations with JJ, going back and forth about a bunch of stuff, and figuring out kind of the shape of what made sense going forward. And then, but then ultimately, though, you're still writing a movie that has to work as a movie and needs to the engine has to run, and that is that's the bulk of the work, and that is the exact same whether you're doing a sequel or whether you're doing a standalone, I guess. You can't think of it in terms of, or I at least can't think of movies as if they're episodes in a sitcom, or as if they're serialized to that degree. And I wanted The Last Jedi to be a full meal. I wanted it to be something that gave you a full experience front to back, so you don't walk out of the theater feeling like you just had ... question mark. You walk out feeling you want to see what happens next, but you had a true feeling of satisfaction at the end of it. Yeah, I typically don't, because I've learned that you get your heart broken if you do, because the actors you thought of are never available when you go to shoot. And that is something, I mean, look, it's not only different in terms of knowing what actors you're going to cast, but in terms of growing up with those actors being your heroes and your favorite characters on the screen, you know. But that also brings a level of, you know, I grew up in Luke Skywalker as my hero. He was the guy who, when I was a little kid, I was like the little kid with the broom at the end of the movie. That was me. And I think that's really, I don't know if you could make a Star Wars movie if you didn't have that. You know, that emotional connection is an asset when you go into it, because that means you're going to approach that character with that love in your heart. I think that's really important.
It's a lovely note to end on. Knives Out is playing here at the London Film Festival, and it opens in the UK in November. Thank you ever so much, everybody,
Guys,
for coming.
Thank you so much for coming, guys.
Thank you.